Welcome to the first episode of Adventure News for 2024. Lots of great bikes to talk about. A rally version of Royal Enfield's 450 Himalayan. The 450 MX bike from Ducati has just been revealed. A special edition Pan America. Kawasaki have just updated the KLX230S. And lastly, I wanted to talk about the highly divisive topic of hybrid motorcycles.
Start it up.
Let's start with Kawasaki. I'm already wearing the green shirt to match, so let's dive into everything about the KLX230S, which has some really nice updates for 2024. The biggest deal of those to me is the suspension travel increase. So on the front, we're going to 200 millimeters of travel, which is a 40 millimeter increase over the outgoing model. Likewise, at the rear, we've got 220 millimeters of travel, which is just over a 50 mil increase over the outgoing model. With the increase in travel, that usually means with these lower models that are made for shorter people, that it does mean you have to sacrifice the lowest seat height possible in order to gain that travel. But Kawasaki have managed to balance that out really nicely here. So the seat height is roughly 840 millimeters now, or 33.2 inches. That is a 12 millimeter or half an inch increase over the outgoing model, but you're still getting 5 times that amount of increase in seat height in travel in the suspension. So I think that is a really nice compromise for the shorter riders. You're now getting a bike with better travel suspension, which is going to aid you better in the off-road situations where this bike is going to be most of the time, while still maintaining a reasonable seat height at 840 millimeters. The updates don't stop there. We're also getting switchable ABS on this 2024 model, and you'll be happy to know that you can switch off the front and the rear. The other interesting feature here is the ABS version gets a bigger front disc than the non-ABS version. So you're getting a 265 millimeter front disc on the ABS version versus 240 millimeters for the non-ABS version. So that is just another incentive to go for the ABS version, because now is it not only safer on the road with that ABS technology, but it's also got that bigger front disc. So I assume that will help braking performance as well. So I would definitely go for the ABS model if you're trying to decide. Another great thing I love to see on any off-road bike is a drop in weight. So Kawasaki have redesigned the chassis. Now they've been able to save 1.2 kilograms or 2.7 pounds. Not a huge amount of weight, but at least they're going in the right direction. The other thing I quite like about this bike is the aesthetics. The direction Kawasaki have recently taken with the KLX bikes, bringing them in line to look more like the KX proper off-road bikes in their lineup. It really helped the look of the KLX300 when they freshened it up, and it's great to see that the 230 is getting that treatment with that fresher, sharper, more aggressive look. I'd love to know your thoughts on the looks though. Are you liking this more modern look, or do you like the older look that the Kawasaki KLX series used to have? Kawasaki are also claiming that this has a bump in performance. Of course, they don't tell you by how much or what that performance actually is, which makes me think that the horsepower increase is so minimal that it would be almost embarrassing for Kawasaki to report, or at least pointless to report. The other interesting feature that has crept into this little 230S, which I think will start to become a trend on a lot of dual sports, is you're able to connect your phone to the motorcycle via Bluetooth to give you a whole pile of extra information and details. So you'll be able to get info like battery voltage. It'll also have a riding logs. You'll also get telephone notices. You'll also get all your maintenance information, like when you did your last servicing, when the next service is due, what maintenance needs to or has been done. I think particularly that suspension and the upgraded bigger front disc and the slightly lighter weight with the chassis redesign plus the aesthetics makes this a really nice upgrade for 2024. It's great to see Kawasaki showing some love to its smaller displacement little trail and dual sport motorcycles. I'm sure a lot of the shorter riders will be happy that they've got a fresh new option, because a lot of the times the manufacturers really do ignore the shorter stature people when it comes particularly to riding off-road motorcycles. Next up is an exciting rumor that has been circulating on the interwebs that Royal Enfield are planning a rally version called the Raid of the Himalayan 450. So better performance off-road. The word on the street is that this will have fully adjustable suspension. It's also claimed by a few media outlets that this will also be lighter than the standard version as well, which I think is really much needed, especially considering that the main rival of the 450 Himalayan is the 390 Adventure from KTM, which has a 20 kilo advantage, particularly with the new 390 coming out in 2025. As great as the 450 is, it's still a little bit heavy at 196 kilos for a single cylinder. But is it just a rumor, or does this actually hold true? Well, the original rumor comes from Rush Lane, and when it comes to their reporting on Royal Enfield, they've been bang on. Royal Enfield even have a code name dubbed the Project K1X. So that's a very specific little piece of detail. Stuff like that you just don't make up on the spot. So that does lend credence that this is a very real project. The other thing that I'm reminded of is, if you remember, there was footage released by Royal Enfield that looked like there were two different bikes. There was one bike that looked like it had beefier suspension as well as a different performance exhaust on it as well, being tested early on there alongside the standard 450s. The other detail is that apparently this project has been delayed further by Royal Enfield, so the expected release of this rally version of the 450 is now supposed to be somewhere around 2027, so it's fairly far out from reaching the showroom floors. Are you excited for a more hardcore off-road ready version of the 450 Himalayan, or are you happy with a standard version to explore the back roads in the trails? Next up, we got Harley Davidson's Pan America with a new model that is supposed to be coming out from their CVO branch. That's who does their really high-end special edition motorcycles, sometimes with performance increases and very high-end componentry, and it usually comes with an extremely expensive price tag because of it. And the Pan America is getting the CVO treatment, so I think we can assume this is going to be much like the special edition models of other adventure bikes. You're going to get shiny suspension, lots of upgraded bolt-on componentry, maybe some aesthetical changes in the paint schemes and the looks as well. But one thing we know for sure is that CVO isn't addressing the performance of the 1250 Pan America, because there have been CARB filings in California, which motorcycle.com is claiming show no power increase over the current models, likely upgraded suspension and some bold new graphics. Personally, I think a more expensive version of an already expensive Harley Davidson Pan America is really going to be a tough sell, particularly outside of the US, where there isn't such patriotic devotion to Harley Davidson. But I'd love to know your thoughts on the Pan America, as it's a very divisive bike, as is the brand. Do you love Harley Davidson and the Pan America in particular? Or do you think this is a complete waste of space of an adventure bike? Let me know down in the comment section below. Ducati have finally revealed their MX bike that they teased a few months ago in 2023, and this has been dubbed the Desmo 450 MX. And one thing's to be sure, this will have decent performance. It'll be a high-end off-road dirt bike. Why am I talking about an MX bike on a dual sport and adventure bike channel? Well, for one thing, I love all kinds of motorcycles. If something interesting catches my eye, I'm going to talk about it. I think this is potentially very exciting for the consumer as well, because more variety in the off-road world is always a good thing in my opinion. Ducati entering into the MX world is a great thing. And as you know, I'm gonna take the logic towards dual sport and adventure bikes, as I always do. Because if the Ducati do well and the response is really positive for their MX bike, you know they're going to start thinking, you know what, we should do an enduro bike as well that can compete against the EXCs and the beaters of the world. And if that does well, they might look towards the dual sport world and think, you know what, KTM are really doing quite well with their 690 Enduro. And Ducati have just released their 698 Mono Hyper Motard with that fantastic single cylinder to compete against the 690 SMT. So they might think to themselves, you know what, bugger it, we make the MX bike, we already make an Enduro bike as well, hypothetically speaking, and we've got the motor to compete against KTM. Let's just make a high-end performance dual sport to compete against the 690 Enduro R. Yes, it's a massive leap of logic and you need your tinfoil hat to get there, but I'd love to know your thoughts. Are you excited to see Ducati get into the MX world, or do you think this will be a flash in the pan? So why do I want to talk about a hybrid motorcycle? Some people are going to say that's the enemy solid, we need to get those things out of there. It's internal combustion engines or nothing. I don't completely disagree. My favorite kind of engine is an ICE engine. I think this is a better compromise and a better way forward than always going for complete electric, because I think the technology isn't quite there with a lot of electric motorcycles, and even to some extent with the electric cars that are still coming out, with the cost of replacing batteries, how much it costs you to charge the things, as well as resale value. It's not always as great on the consumer back end. I think the great compromise for the interim is the hybrid motorcycle, because you still get that petrol power experience. You get the added bonus of increased performance with that extra electric motor attached to it, as well as you should see a very big increase in efficiency over just the petrol powered versions. I think this would be the best way forward for the adventure bike world, rather than trying to shoehorn in completely electric bikes at the moment that don't make too much sense, because one, they're incredibly heavy, and two, the range on them is just not enough to go long distances. And if you do go long distances, you find yourself in remote areas and there's going to be no charging points anyways. Whereas a hybrid, particularly one that isn't a plug-in, is something that could really work well in the off-road setting, because you're getting fuel efficiency out of that motor. So it means you'll be able to go further. It increases the distances you'll be able to travel between petrol stops. So I think that is a massive benefit, as well as you might be able to get a performance increase as well. It will be interesting to see how heavy these bikes will be with the addition of an electric motor to go alongside the petrol motor. I also think, generally speaking, that electric motorcycles aren't going to completely take over the automotive industry. I think of electric vehicles more as a diesel motor, where it's going to have its place within the industry, but it isn't going to be the dominant force that absolutely everyone is going to be driving. I think that's not only limited by the materials needed to construct electric vehicles is going to be a massive limitation, but lots of people are just not going to want that kind of vehicle in their garage. So that's how I like to think about it. I think this hybrid system is going to be a great compromise for everyone, and it's going to take the industry into interesting areas with features that we wouldn't be able to see from petrol motors or fully electric motorcycles. But I'd love to know your thoughts. And as always, guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up.